Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad al-Fatih lima ughliq wal-Khatim lima sabaq Nasir al-Haq bil-Haq wal-Hadi ila siratak al-Mustaqim wa ala alihi wa sahbihi haqqa qadrihi wa miqdarihi al-azim walhamdulillah. So continuing on from what we spoke about yesterday, in relation to having gaining an understanding of da'wah. So this section of this book we're looking at, we're on the first chapter, Al-Bab al-Awwal, and the title of the first chapter is a Madkhal wa Istiftah li-fiqh da'wah sharif al-qiyam biha. In other words, it's like an introduction or an opening to the topic of fiqh al-da'wah. What's fiqh al-da'wah? Is understanding how to present the message, understanding how to call people to Islam, and the nobility of establishing this call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's very critical for us to understand, that as callers to Allah, you have to have a really deep understanding of how you're going to present the message, of human psychology, of the people that we're dealing with. One of the secrets that we see in Medina to Munawwara, when the Prophet ﷺ arrives in Medina to Munawwara, he'd already sent Sayyidina Musa bin Umar before him, hadn't he? He'd sent him before as this ambassador for maybe 10, 11 months. And he taught the people of Medina to Munawwara, and literally they converted en masse virtually. Virtually the entire city of Medina to Munawwara became Muslim through Sayyidina Musa bin Umar. So then when the Prophet ﷺ then comes to when the Prophet ﷺ then comes to Medina to Munawwara, he sits in the Masjid ﷺ, and people start to come. Yeah, so this is the new ruler, the new leader who's now arrived, ﷺ, and people start to arrive to meet him. And anytime someone comes into the mosque, Sayyidina Musa explains, this is so-and-so, he's a leader of his tribe, or this is so-and-so, he's a worker in this, he does this job, or this is so-and-so, she's got this problem. Yeah, like this. So all the people that come in, the Prophet ﷺ, Musa bin Umar, is telling him beforehand, this is who he is. Why? That's a lesson for us, that he's telling him about each person's situation, each person's psychological state, each person's outlook on the world at that particular time. So everything, all of it can be contextualized. Yeah, so the way the message is then presented is done in a contextualized and appropriate way. So know that there's universals in da'wah. For example, for us to be cheerful, yeah, for us to be optimistic and to be smiling and to be happy, to be enthusiastic, yeah, to show love and reverence for the great signs of the religion. These are universals that apply in any time and place. But then there has to be an understanding of specifics. There has to be a wisdom aspect to our da'wah, where we start to deal with people in a more nuanced and in a more intelligent way. One of the things that one of the teachers there, Sheikh Fahmi, one of the teachers, one of the great sort of exemplars of da'wah, that he talks a lot about the idea of establishing prophetic values. What he calls that qiyam are like values or principles that we have. And what he says is that he says every culture that you go to, yeah, when you're going to go out from this blessed Institute Dar Mustafa, people obviously go all over the world. Yeah, they go out to different areas of the world. He says every place you go to in the world, they have their own culture and their own ideas and their own values. So when you're calling people to Islam in that context, what are you actually doing? You're actually seeking to remind them of their own history and their own culture. In other words, every culture on the face of the planet values sidq, truthfulness. It values integrity. It values wisdom, intelligence. It values courage. And all of these it values mercy, generosity, kindness, gentleness. These are universal values. So when you go, all you're actually saying to these people is, we're just reminding you of what already exists in your culture, what's already there. Yeah, we're reminded that we're trying to extol and also embody these values for them to then be able to take on. This is the essence of what's meant, because the question is interesting. I mean, we had the opportunity to sit with Habib Umar bin Hafiz, and he said that when you go back and you teach knowledge in your town, you should teach the obligatory sciences. And then he said, beyond that, you should like expand out a little bit beyond that as well. Yeah. So what does this expansion mean? So when we got an explanation of this comment, is that we were told the explanation of what we call tawassa, of expanding beyond the obligatory sciences from the most primary knowledges that we teach beyond the basics is prophetic values. Is these values that we're talking about, these prophetic characteristics that are universal values that connect and attach to every soul in existence. Okay, so then if you continue on with the book, then we're on page 24 for those who are following, and we're on that, the first paragraph down, so to speak. So he talks here about people entering into this path. So he says, إدخال طوائف كثيرة من الإنس والجن من العرب والعجم من الشرق والغرب بترتيب من الحق سبحانه وتعالى وحكمه وخطوة كبرى يقوم عليها تجديد هذا الدين وهذه رسالة في العالمين فضل من الله سبحانه وتعالى يعرفه من يعرفه ويتأهل له من يتأهل له ويدركه من يدركه. So he's talking here, and this is an optimistic sign for us. This is a beautiful statement here, beautiful paragraph from Habib, that he's saying that there's many people now, groups that are entering into the desire, groups are entering into a desire to renew the religion. So there's many of these great groups from the Arabs, from the non-Arabs, from the East and the West, that they're coming and they're taking this huge step of establishing the renewal of this religion and of this message, this risala, across the entire world. And says, this is the Father, this is a great bounty from God. And the one who knows about it, and the one who's from his people is from his people, and the one who's realized it has realized it. So this tajdeed is taking place. This is one of the things we have to realize is we have no control. So this renewal of the religion of Islam is going to happen. This new people coming into the religion of Islam is going to happen. This strengthening of the Muslims is going to happen. The question we have is for our own selves. Are we going to enter? Are we going to partake? Are we going to raise ourselves and raise our families to what they call a Muhammadan elevation, where we're able to become Muhammadan ourselves and take part in this tajdeed? That's really the question. The question is not, how can we change? It's going to change anyway. The world's going to change, and people are going to enter into Islam, and people are going to be strengthened by this religion, and the izzah of Islam is going to rise. So for us, it's just a matter of, are we going to take part in this, or do we not want to take part? And if you want to take part, then we have to have certain preparatory steps, which is what really this course is about. So if you want to become these people, these renewers, and this is taking place, the most important thing we need is we need certain sifat. We need certain characteristics or qualities that allow us to become people of renewal. And there's a beautiful summary of this. Now, we studied with Sheikh Umar Hussain al-Khatib many years ago, and he said this is a short summary of the key qualities of a caller to God. And these qualities are equally applicable to a parent. They're equally applicable to anybody who has any type of responsibility, like a teacher, somebody who takes care of anyone else, or any person from the ummah. Because da'wah is applicable, it's an obligation upon all of us. So these qualities are what are going to allow us to have a relationship with our parents. That's a positive relationship. They're going to allow us to have a relationship with our siblings, our inner group and our outer group, our children, first and foremost too. Like they mentioned, there was once one of the brothers, like a convert brother, he went to the Dora. The Dora is like a 40-day program. It's like a 40-day summer retreat, you could say. And it's quite intense. It's more like a spiritual boot camp, I'd probably say it is. 40 days. And he came back after those 40 days. And he's living with his parents who were non-Muslim. And so he comes back the very first morning. One of his friends comes to visit him. So he knocks on his door and his mom answers. And he says, how are things? And she's like, I don't know what's happened to my son, but he was up at like 5 or 6 in the morning and he's mowing the lawn. She goes, and he's washed up the dishes. She's like, wherever you took him, take him again. And like take some of his mates as well. They wanted to go to this place, but I don't know what it was. I don't know. He hasn't really told me much about what he did there, but I'm seeing the impact because he's now serving me. Yeah, he's now serving the people around him. He actually cares. He's got concern and he's helping out around him. So this is what we're talking about. This now is the essence of what we call da'wah, to take on these lofty character traits. Now they mentioned, I'm sure many of you know this about Habib Qasim al-Saqaf in his 20s. Yeah, a young man who's mastered the Islamic sciences, and he's the principal of a university, of a ribat, a university, and yet every night he washes the clothes of his students, he cleans their rooms, he serves them in every possible way that you can think about, and then alongside that, during the daytime, he's teaching them as well, every single science you can think of. Yeah, this is what we mean by taking on these qualities. So we're going to look at this as a beautiful summary here that we're going to look at, and inshallah try to bring some examples so people can understand. So this is what we call, the quality we need to have is called magnanimity. It's called magnanimity. And magnanimity has different aspects which we're going to explain now. So this chapter, so he begins, this is Habib Umar, he says, know, first and foremost, he says, you have to know, you have to understand, you have to realize that this sphere of da'wah, this field, or this area of da'wah is vast and magnanimous. Yeah, first and foremost, it's a vast, like we've been saying, it's a vast area in terms of our engagement with people, but it's also vast in applicability. It's not just applicable to the teacher or to the person who's out there in the field of khidmah. It's applicable to everybody and anybody in any context. Yeah, so this vastness is seen it should be seen in our approach, in our creative way, the way we approach this field of da'wah, the way we speak to different people at different levels. Yeah, you see this, like Habib Umar said when he visited America, he sat with all categories of society and he was equally comfortable with all of them. So sometimes he might be sitting with people, like sort of gang members, people like that, people what we would call of the criminal class, so to speak, and he was comfortable with them. Then he might go to a university and sit with the great, professors and legal minds of the West. Or then he might be going to like a conference where he's sitting with a wide variety of community leaders. Then he might be doing engagement with normal people. Then he might be sat with professionals, from the West, except like this, different people. And he was able to assimilate this. This is the nature of prophetic character, is when you can go into situations and adapt and benefit whoever is in front of you. So it's a vast thing. Then, so who is this magnanimous one? Who is he? So now we're going to look at maybe 10 to 12 qualities of the magnanimous one. So the first one, it says the magnanimous one, this person who is suited to da'wah and is suited to the prophetic call, this magnanimous one is one who would completely forego his own rights. He would completely let go of his own rights for others. Yeah. In other words, he's somebody, like we mentioned before about Adal and Fadl, is somebody who fulfills other people's rights, but does not want any of his own rights to be fulfilled, or her rights to be fulfilled. Yeah. So these are people, like it says in the Quran, they prefer others over themselves. Yeah. Even when they're in need. Even when they're in dire need of something, they still prefer others over themselves. Yeah, like the beautiful story. This is why the ayah was revealed that we see in the seerah. The Prophet ﷺ, that there's people, some of his companions, they have guests. Yeah, and these guests come into the house, and they really have no food at all to serve, and they have nothing to serve even for their children. So what do? They put their children to bed hungry. And then they dim the lights, like you've got candles, they dim the candles so they can't see that the house is actually completely empty. The guests are not able to see that. And then the guests come in and eat all the food that they have. And they dim the lights because if the guests could see the house was empty, they'd be like, no, we can't eat this. You eat this. This is for you. We don't need this. So they do this in order. And because of this sidq, because of this sidq, what actually happens is that they actually become mentioned in the Quran. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals an ayah of the Quran about these people. I mean, what kind of sincerity is that? That an ayah in the Quran can be revealed about you. Subhanallah. Yeah. So this is part of them. These are the magnanimous ones. They completely forego their own rights. they also, alongside that, like we see examples like Khadijatul Kubra, another example of sacrifice. Yeah, now the people that give. This is the nature of the mu'min, the believer. That's why it's sad. Like sometimes you have conversations with people, and the conversation here of many Muslims now is, how can we get more from the state? Yeah, how can we get more from the government? Yeah, what about what can you give for the government? Yeah, what can you give the people that are out there, rather than what can I take? Yeah, the attitude of the mu'min, the believer, is always about what he can give. Yeah, what he can impart from gifts and benefit. Yeah, so the magnanimous one is completely let go of his own rights, and that's number one. Number two, he's concerned with embedding private acts of worship in his life. Yeah, he's concerned with embedding private acts of worship. This is the foundation. Like we mentioned, if you look at the Ihya Ulumuddin, this great book, it begins with ibadat. The spiritual path begins with establishing private acts of worship in our life. And then our interactions with human beings improve as a result. Once we have private worship in our life, Quran, dhikr, knowledge, tafakkur, reflection, salah, tahajjud, dua. Once we have all of these things in our life, firmly implanted within our life, then our interactions with people improve. Then our character, our generosity, our mercy, all of these things start to improve once we've established this. Yeah? Once we've established these. And we see this. Look at Imam Ghazali. Imam Ghazali, the greatest scholar of his age. Yeah, he was sat as the chair of the greatest university in the world at the time, in Baghdad, and he had all of the students of the entire world at his feet. People would travel just to sit with him and learn. But he realized that private acts of worship were not in his life. I mean, they were, weren't they? Of course, do you think he wasn't praying? Do you think he wasn't? Of course he was. But they weren't really embedded in his life. There was no sincerity. They weren't impacting his being. They weren't giving him a sense of freedom from creation, a sense of freedom from desire, a sense of freedom from love of leadership, from love of position, from love of rank amongst human beings. So these acts of worship were not within his life in any real way. That's the point I'm trying to make. When you're embedding private acts of worship, I'm talking about the inward here, not just like becoming a robot where, yeah, I've got to tick off, I've got to do 100 istighfar today, I've got to do 100 salawat, I've got to read 1 juz of Quran. No, this is about embedding acts of worship where it becomes real within your life. Now, that type of embedding, that type of acts of worship does require and a sense of sacrifice and a sense of overcoming difficulty. So Imam al-Ghazali, what does he do? He goes out for 10 years, yeah, wandering the jungles, yeah, in order to attain the secret of sincerity. Now, I'm not telling you guys to go out and wander the jungles, but what we do need is every day we need time alone between us and Allah where we can build this relationship. And we need to try to be as aware as we can and have as much engagement, private engagement, one-to-one engagement with the divine as we can within our context, within our lives. And that varies. Like my wife, she sent me a question recently from one of the sisters asking about between Maghrib and Isha. There's an excellent question. So saying between Maghrib and Isha, we should be engaged with the Quran. This is a point that we made a lot, isn't it? But how do we do that practically when we have family? Yeah, when we have, that is a time where we might well be engaged with other things. Yeah, whereas the Tahajjud, for example, there's, people pretty much asleep. So you have your own time then with Allah. It's a lot easier. But Bain al-Maghrib and Isha is harder. So again, what we do here is we do what we can, even if it's just 5 minutes of Quran. Even if it's just like Habib Qadmi says, even just to read 7 lines of the Quran. Yeah, anyone can, you could read the 7 lines, someone could call you and you could just be like, yeah, wait 1 second, like just put your hand up and just finish those 7 lines. That's how quickly you can read 7 lines. Yeah, so, but the point is consistency, to never ever miss a day and to just build it up like that. So it becomes exponential spiritual growth. Okay, so you embed these private acts of worship with firm resolve. Yeah, with firm resolve. In other words, we have firm resolve in implementing these acts of worship. We also have firm resolve in every other aspect of our life. Yeah, this is the essence of the prophetic message. The Prophet ﷺ, even the way he walked, showed great focus and determination. Look at the way the Prophet ﷺ walked. It was a walk of power and resolve and determination, yeah, to ascend and ascend and ascend. Even the way he walked, ﷺ, had this aspect to it. So this idea of what they call himma, some of the ulama say himma is the ismul azam. What is, they say, the great name of Allah, the great name of Allah that guarantees acceptance of du'as. The great name of Allah which guarantees acceptance of du'as is himma. It is having high aspiration, drive, motivation, determination, resolve. Yeah, this firm resolve. And this, if you look at children, it's interesting. What is the one criteria that the modern people now tell us, and the ancient people also tell us? What's the one trait that children need to succeed? It's himma, it's resolve, it's determination. Yeah, like this Tough, I think it's Paul Tough, he's written a book, How Children Succeed. It's a very interesting book. I recommend people to read it, whether you parents or not. Yeah, grit. One is say grit. Yeah. So like the fundamental quality that distinguishes between success and failure for children is determination. Great. Yeah. Or that he calls it, what does he call it? Cognitive traits or something like that, which is basically, we would just say it's character. Yeah. Like our teacher Sheikh Ibrahim said that they say cognitive traits, we say character. Yeah. Character is what determines the success or failure of a child. It's not actually academic brilliance. Yeah. It's actually determination, himma. Yeah, that determination. So it's embedding that within you. And unfortunately for us, that resolve comes about through difficulty. So a lot of people, they might not want to do it themselves, but also they don't want to put their children through it. Oh no, I don't want to put my child through difficulty. Why do I want to put my child through difficulty? But through that difficulty is how they're going to rise. That's how they're actually going to attain something. That was one of the secrets of a place like Tarim. Like we were in Tarim and then we visited the site of Nabiullah Hud, the Prophet Hud alayhi salam. So you visit, it's like you go there for 3 days, sometimes longer. We went there for about 3 days. And in this site, there's very little electricity. Electricity cuts out for like 12, 15 hours at a time. And we went and it's very, very, very hot. I'm talking about 50 degrees. I'm talking about heat that you can't even imagine. And then the majority of the day is not even spent inside. So you don't even have the luxury of a fan. You got about AC, you don't even have the luxury of a fan because you're out. So you have these huge gatherings, mashallah. You go up, you climb it. First of all, you start at the bottom, you climb up basically like a mountain. You get to one level, you stop there, and then you go to an even higher level. And you're there for like 3 or 4 hours at a time in intense heat. They have like gatherings, they have lessons, they have, various other activities. It's a very, very intense experience. And it's very, very tough. Physically, very, very, very tough. But it's amazing. You come back from there. Like if you came back after 3 days and literally you feel like your whole life's changed. That suddenly embedding whatever you want in your life becomes very, very easy. Because it's such a grueling experience. You come back and it's like, wow, life is like actually really simple. Yeah, I can actually do a lot because you've been through that experience. Yeah, so this is it. And if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, this is not popular. I remember one of our teachers, Sheikh Burhan, mentioning this. We had a raising children class, and people really didn't like it. And but I mean, this is the reality. Is what happened here is that he mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, his upbringing was very, very difficult. He went through the crucible of extreme difficulty, and that is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, adamani rabbi, yeah, my Lord, told me adab, my Lord refined my character. So the Prophet ﷺ says. So what was the upbringing that Allah chose for the Prophet ﷺ? It was radical difficulty, very, very little food, very, very harsh, difficult circumstances that raised the best of creation. And then you look at Fatima Zahra, very, very difficult circumstances, extremely difficult circumstances. She sees things that we would consider like, that's, subhanAllah, that's like, that's going to affect and damage a person's psyche and things like that. How can you put a child through that? Yeah. And yeah, these are the secrets. That one of them, Sheikh Munir Bazuhair, one of the great scholars of Tarim, really amazing scholar. He did a talk on raising children a while back. And he mentioned in that talk, he said that people now, like, mothers and fathers, but mothers, like, we study and we learn about different techniques for raising children, etc., etc. He said, all of these women, he goes, you can bring them all together with all of their degrees, their qualifications, their experiential, vocational, whatever it might be, bring them all together. He goes, collectively, they are not able to produce what Hababa Zahra, anha, the mother of Habib Umar bin Hafiz, produced. Habib Umar bin Hafiz and his brother, Habib Ali Mashur, just produced one of them. Just produce one of them, or bring it all together. The reason we can't is because we're not really attaching ourselves to that way of the Salaf, because it's too hard. We don't want to do that to our kids. How can I do that to my kids? But I mean, this is what, so what we're saying here is not that you just, give your kids, no, it's not that. It's about really teaching them about difficulty within life, teaching them about, and then that also applies to ourselves. And look at the Sahaba, look at Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. He talks about going on an expedition with the Prophet ﷺ, and he goes, they are nothing to eat, and they haven't to eat. He goes, I took a cloak and I spread that over cloth, and he goes, this is what we're eating on that day, just to be able to allay our hunger pangs. Sayyidina Utbah bin Ghazwan, Anwar, he mentions going on an expedition with the Prophet ﷺ. There's only 7 or 8 of them, and again they're eating leaves, they're eating cactus plants. And he said, what does he say? He says, every single person in that expedition went on to become a great leader. They went to become a leader. There was the Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq was there, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. These are the elite Sahab. They're the ones who were there on that expedition. Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, the ones who went on to become the governors, the leaders of nations, of peoples, of ummahs. Yeah, those kind of people, they were the ones, and they were raised in a crucible of extreme. Look at Mecca for 13 years. It was very, very, very difficult. Yeah, so this is part of that resolve building. And I mean, it's not a popular message, but it's a message that people need to understand. Yeah, and then it needs to become a graded way of understanding how can we attain that if we really want to attain these qualities of leadership. People want to talk about leadership and becoming a leader. From amongst the foundation aspects of becoming a leader is the ability to endure difficulty and the ability to have firm resolve. Okay, so we have this. The next one, he will rectify an error within himself by means of clear thought. Yeah, so this is the next quality, subhanAllah, is that you're able to reflect on your own mistakes. Very, very difficult to do. Yeah, it's easy to criticize and analyze others, but to turn inwardly and see what's happened, dissect the problem. First of all, just to see that you are imperfect in some ways, hard for the nafs. The nafs, who we are all deeply in love with, we absolutely love ourselves. Absolutely love ourselves, don't we? To the highest extent. So now when you love someone, love is blind. How can you see faults? How can you see blemishes? How can you see cracks when you love that thing? And there's no more intense love than we have for our own self. So to see your own faults is difficult. To see someone else's faults is very easy. Very, very easy. But our own, so to see that fault is one thing, and then to dissect it and to bring up with clear thought to say, okay, this is what I've done wrong. This is how I'm going to get better in our personal lives or in our public lives. Yeah, this is the challenge here. Yeah, like you mentioned, that the ability to self-reflect is greater than years and years of worship. They mentioned one of the people of Bani Israel, one of the great, from the Abidun, from the Abidin, one of these people who he was a great worshipper. They say he spent 70 years in a room, like in his little room, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 70 years, ruk'i sujood and etc., like different, intense worship of Allah for 70 years. Then after 70 years, he gets a knock on the door. And someone comes to him and they say, we're in drought. We haven't had rain for a long time. Please, can you come and make dua? Come and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to alleviate this from us and to give us rain. So he comes out and he makes dua, Ya Allah, give us rain. And nothing happens. Yeah, nothing happens. So then he goes back to his room and he starts to think, like, what's going on here? I've been worshiping. Is there something wrong in my worship? Was I not sincere? What could I improve? Where have I gone wrong? He spends an hour analyzing, muhasaba, self-analysis, taking oneself to account. And then after about an hour, he gets another knock on the door. This time it's from a Nabi. Then the prophet of that time, of that place that was sent by Allah, that prophet comes to him and he says, I've got a message for you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An angel has come to me now with a message. Because what's the message? He said, you've just spent the last hour self-analyzing. Yeah, 1 hour in analysis of your weaknesses, your errors, your mistakes, your deficiencies before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said that hour of worship is more beloved to Allah than your 70 years of worship. That hour is more beloved than your 70 years. Because it's a difficult thing, and this is how we improve. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to improve, because otherwise angels worship a lot more than we. There's angels from the beginning of time up until now, they've been in a state of ruku or sujood or dhikr or qiyam. Yeah, they worship for our strippers in acts of worship. But why is a human being greater than the angels? Because he has an ability to improve, to turn back, to get better. This is what Allah wants. Allah wants us to get better in whatever we do. Like this George Lender, I recommend you read his book on mastery. It's called like the 5 Keys to Success. You can get it online if you Google George Lender Mastery. Really amazing book. And in there he says mastery is the commitment to continual improvement. This is mastery is not to be able to know something really well. Mastery is an attitude. It's an improvement it's a commitment to continual improvement. That every time you do something, you want to get better at it and better at it and better at it. Like that. Yeah, please put the book title in chat. Yeah, inshallah. I mean, literally, if you Google George Lender Mastery, but we'll find the official title. We'll get someone to put it, inshallah. Okay. So he does this, and then there's a few other points that we'll just mention here and then conclude. So he mentions, the next one, he has a good opinion of God's creation, hoping for mercy to descend upon all of them. Yeah. So this person of magnanimity, this person of character traits, he has a good opinion of God's creation. Yeah. He always sees good in every situation, and he hopes for mercy, for goodness to descend upon everybody. Yeah. And he overlooks their errors. This is very important for people who work in the community field. People who work in the community field, we have to be able to overlook the errors of others, the errors of organizations, the errors of other people in our field. Why? Because it's a field littered with this. It's littered with errors. Yeah, it really is littered with errors. Why? Because as soon as people start doing something, it's very easy to criticize. Very easy to criticize, but then because we can sit back as armchair critics, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. You try doing it yourself, someone else will pick your ideas apart as well. That's all it is. Like we see something, or he's doing it wrong, we go and do it. We can have 10, 15 errors ourselves. So therefore, the criticism should be that we should be constructive. So we overlook errors. If we're all going to criticize, then it's constructive. And what I'm saying really is constructive. That's really coming from the depths of your heart. And if it's constructive, you want to get constructive criticism, spend an hour, 2, 3 hours in the depths of the night calling out to Allah for that person to be rectified and to be improved. Then go and give him the advice. If you're not going to do that, then shh, silence. Don't say a word. Really, don't say a word. You have no sincerity. All you're doing is just expressing your own ego. If you want to give advice to people, give advice, but then do the work. Like people now, like somebody while they were telling me, oh, I'm really concerned about this situation. I'm really concerned. Okay, if you're concerned, then go and spend your nights in concern. And if you really are, like, I'm so worried about the state of the Muslims, I'm so worried about what's going on in Kashmir and Palestine. Yeah, you should be. Then give your time. Yeah, give up your sleep and give up all these precious things. Give and ask Allah. Then go and do it. Then go and take the means. Then go and give you advice. So I'm really concerned about that brother. The project is not running it properly. You should bring X, Y, and Z. Is that your ego talking? Or is it real advice? If it's real advice, then spend 3 hours, Ya Allah, 3 hours calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to rectify and improve that person's project, that person's inner and outer state. Screaming out to Allah, begging Allah as if you are yourself in the point of absolute, utter desperation. Begging Allah to change and improve and help and assist that brother. Once you do that, then mashallah, God give you advice. And I'd love to hear advice from people like that who spend 3 hours screaming out to Allah. That's the kind of advice. And then you still give the advice with a smile. You still give the advice well, but do that first. Yeah, or maybe do that for 7 nights. Yeah, and then start to give you advice, and you construct. I just want to give constructive criticism. You just want to show you better. You just want to show you've noticed something that they haven't noticed. We need to sometimes see what's going on within ourselves, however painful that might be. Yeah, we see what's going within ourselves. Then go and rectify. We need rectification. But rectification comes in the depths of the night. It comes from a sincere heart, a heart of purity, a heart that wants change. That's where it comes from. Otherwise, we just shh, we're just silent. Yeah, we don't talk about other people's. They've done this wrong. They've done that wrong until we've established some type of sincerity in that regard, inshallah. Okay, we'll stop there. He continues on. He talks about patience and steadfastness, laziness in overcoming this, etc. But we'll cover some of these points. We finish them off tomorrow, inshallah. If there's any questions, inshallah, we can take them. I think there was one already in the chat. What does magnanimous actually mean? Okay, good question. So magnanimous, I mean, like what we're saying here is what we've explained here is magnanimity. Magnanimity has a meaning of sort of, you know, like perfection or that kind of idea, but really we're using it in an idiomatic way. We're using it in a specific way, and therefore what we're giving is an explanation of that. Okay, very good. Please put the book title in the chat. Yeah, okay, so the book title is George Leonard. I forget the exact name of the book. It's like something, attaining mastery, the keys to success, something along those sorts of lines. If you could just put it in the chat. If it's George Leonard Mastery, attaining mastery, the keys to success, something like that. Basically, if you Google that, it's available as a free book, as a free PDF online, inshallah. So if you put that in there, I just forget the exact title. It's George Leonard, like Mastery, the keys to success, something like that. Okay. How can we practically teach our children about difficulties in life? Appreciate we could use words to explain suffering, but how can we place them in such environments that may seem unappealing but ultimately beneficial for them? Okay, so one of the things that we can do on a practical level, and I saw this with my children, we were in Morocco, is one of the things they did was they had like a sleepover. They slept over at the house of some of the fuqara. People were very, like, it was shocking for them. These people, my daughter came back, she was saying they don't even have toothpaste. Right? I was like, subhanAllah, he goes, like, because literally they have nothing. Like, they wake up and they have like 50 pence in their pocket, the equivalent of 50 pence. Barakallahu fikum, Sayyidina Salih. Yeah, he's given us, that's the book. Yeah. So what we have here is we have an experience. Yeah, so this is how we do it. Get them to go and meet people and be with people who are going through difficulties within their lives. Yeah, that's a really important aspect of it. And la hawla wa quwwata illa billah, those people are everywhere. Yeah, whether we had eyes that could see, whether we had was everywhere. Just yesterday, I was with my wife. We went to Asda. So outside Asda, we met a couple. Yeah, like they've left. They're from like Blackburn actually, and they've left and they've had to come to our town. And one the gentleman, he has like you know, he has learning difficulties and he has issues with being around people. So they've got nowhere to stay now. They're literally staying on a tent. They're living in a tent next to the motorway. I mean, look at the temperature, that -2. So there's going to be -5 on Wednesday. They're living in a tent. Yeah, you see them literally, their lips had gone blue. They were shivering. Yeah? Why aren't our children being with them? And those are the best of people. Allah, say the best of people. I'd rather be with them than be with many others. Yeah, many others, including imams and this, that, and the other, and sheikh so and so. I'd rather be with them. Yeah, and it's amazing what they've been at this for 6 weeks. And what the lady, what she said, it really touched me. She said, these 6 weeks have been such a great blessing. Okay, how can this be great? She goes, because my partner, he was really used to struggle with engaging with people. He was very, very shy. He was very paranoid about people, etc. Because now he's really opened up. He's learned social skills. He's learned that's seeing the positive. You want to understand positivity, that's seeing the positive in every situation. So this is what we do. We introduce them to these kind of people. These are the arbab, to be honest. For me, these are the lordly figures on the face of this planet. Those kind of people that have no real barriers between them and spiritual attainment. So introduce them to those types of people. Yeah, and then they'll start to understand and start to get a sense of it. And then, of course, put them in the presence of the awliya, who will naturally impart upon them these types of wisdoms and these types of understandings, inshallah. Another way of how do we get them to teach difficulties in life is the vehicle of the fortuitous sports. These sports that really rear character. Yeah, so things like horse riding and swimming and wrestling and archery, you know, like sword fighting, long staff, short staff, all these things. All these things rear qualities of leadership. And we know this because this is why they're taught at Eton and Harrow and Westminster. All these elite schools teach them. This is why the Prophet ﷺ came and taught them. This is why any culture or civilization worth its salt has these at the forefront. These are vehicles for attaining higher character traits. Yeah? If you want to attain perseverance and courage and strength, then teach them wrestling. If you want them to attain how to overcome and master the laziness of the lower self and the passions of the lower self, teach them horse riding. If you want to teach them balance, how to balance their lives, yeah, and be be people of equilibrium and justice, then teach them swimming. Yeah? If you want them to become intellectually sound and to understand intricate, deeper realities, become people of wisdom, precision in their lives and in their knowledge, then teach them archery. Like this, yeah, and khalas, and etc. So this is how, these are some of the means that we can take, inshallah. Okay, Jazakumullah khair, inshallah. We've all run a bit in time. If there is questions, though, marhaban, we can take any other questions. People can unmute their mic and ask, or they can write a question, inshallah, in the chat. Okay, inshallah. Stop that. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.